I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And this is Mad as a Hatter. Who is this for?
This is for Donald.
Shout out to the big homie Donald. For timely topical political commentary, you can hit us up at Middle America with Vin and Sori. We did a fireside last night, which was fun. I hadn't done it in quite some time. And
I was cooking for the first half and then I jumped in.
yeah, and that's the first time she cooked in the entire week.
It's a lie. I made a roast for him 3 days ago.
More lies. Okay, so that's what we do. We hang out for about 2 hours. This time was an extended fireside. It was 2.5 hours. We talked about everything.
He would have stayed on too if I wasn't like, we need to record.
Yeah.
We need to record.
Music, religion, current events, favorite bands, all that jazz. So we do that periodically, and that's because we like to connect with you guys.
We do.
Also, there are multiple ways to get your song reviewed, dear listener. $1 at the gate gets you in at Patreon, where you can meet the world famous Kellendross, world famous Zonia. I'm going to see if Ben Webb will make an appearance. Ben Webb is one of my favorite
human. He does those socials.
Yeah, he's so antisocial. Ben Webb is like, it's almost like mythical. But he's one of my favorite human beings. Anyway, $1 at the gate gets you in.
He's a rude bastard. That's what he is.
He's so good-hearted, though.
But
He's a good guy.
You love him, so.
He's a good guy. He's a good-hearted fella.
It's so funny to me, like, when somebody's, like, would have gotten blocked, but you like them, so they slip through.
Who's they? There's only one person where that would happen.
Well, no, like, just in, like, regular life, sometimes you let, like, bad behavior slide because the person is, like...
Oh, well, that's all.
Yeah, you're like, well, that Riley...
You also meet the world-famous Pony and the world-famous... I mean, Leah, it's just a wonderful world. On top of that, you get to pool all your points together, and that influences what songs that we review with your teammates. They've got Dungeons and Dragons, they've got... what's the other one? Minecraft. It's unbelievable stuff. When the website goes up, you will have access to the backstage section, restricted area of the website. All of this there, listen up for $1 on Patreon. Now, if you're a filthy capitalist...
That's better than the dollar store.
I agree.
That's a lot of content.
If you're a filthy capitalist like Sori, and you don't want to wait and negotiate with your team to come up with cool points...
Why should we
and you want to go straight to the head of the line... because you're a filthy capitalist, then $125 gets you straight to the head of the line. You also get a lifetime membership to the VIP Backstage Club, the super restricted area of our site, where you'll have access to, yours truly and her untruly and things of that nature. And you also get to decide what songs we chose. And that's what the big homie did. If you do that 3 times, you get bumped down to the $75 rate and you stay there forever. Okay.
So shout out to Donald who picked this song.
Shout out to Donald who picked this song.
He had a lot of personal reasons why this song is important.
I'm pretty sure the next time Donald does one, he's down to 75, right?
I think he already is there.
Okay, so Donald, the next one you send is 75, okay? If you send us the 125, we're going to send you a refund. All right. Mad as a Hatter, let's go.
Okay, and also, I guess these 2 girls were homeschooled.
That's right, homeschool.
You're so quiet. So are we. Sometimes.
The convent.
We wrote this for our grandfather, and he suffered from schizophrenia. And I think mental illness is one of those things that's very hard to talk about. It's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. But I think it's something that we should be open about it. It's really hard to watch somebody slipping away, especially recently our grandmother, our mom's mom, has been slipping away kind of into dementia. And so we are gonna remember our grandparents when we sing this next one. It's about mental illness. It's called Mad as a Hatter.
Wow.
a thief. It'll steal into bed and rob you while you sleep. You'll never feel it. It pulls off the covers, rifles through your head, and then you wake to find you can't remember what you just said. Happens to everyone. Just like the father of my father, time stole his mind, and I can't forget that 1/4 of his blood is mine. I try not to worry. Please don't come for me. I promise I'll be great. Just to let me keep what's mine. Please don't come for me. If you mustn't, just please wait. Let me have some time. So please don't come for me. Mind over matter. Don't matter when you're mad as a hatter.
Wow.
It's hard to draw a clear distinction. Who you are, who you were. Through the looking glass, where past and future begin to blur. No one can blame you. Well, they say the world is what you make it. You think, speak, and breathe, and those rules still apply. Stuck in a world of make believe. Make the best with what you're given. Please don't come for me. I promise I'll be great. Just to let me keep what's mine. Please don't come for me. If you mustn't, just please wait. Let me have some time. Please don't come for me. Mind over matter. Don't know when you're mad as a hatter. Red off the dead, big roses, big roses, red off the dead, off the dead, big roses, big roses, red off the dead, big roses, big roses, red off the dead, off the dead, big roses, the queen, big roses, off the dead, big roses, big roses.
Wow. 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 They're an incredible little team, the two of them.
Yeah.
I really, really like their music. If I didn't know what the song was about, I just love the way that it sounded. I could, gave me goosebumps and stuff. It obviously takes it to another level, and when you can hear what she's saying and understand that she's talking about mental illness, and you're probably going to have a different perspective on this, but like mental illness was not something that we talked about in my family. So if somebody suffered from any forms of it, it wasn't talked about, and it wasn't like it was non-existent. You know what I mean? Like if somebody, had an issue, we didn't have, to my understanding, and maybe you have a different take, I don't think there was any major issues. There was dementia, when people got older and stuff like that. And so, but I had the worries of, okay, my grandmother is part of who I am, and so I would worry about, my grandfather, he died young, or my uncle got cancer. So those are all things I've always thought of bloodline and like autonomy, like anatomy. I mean, your body and what you could get past because you have the same genes. But as far as mental illness, I never thought like what she was saying, like 1/4 of you is mine. I try not to be afraid, but that's not something that I, had ever, thought about for myself personally. But, wow.
Yeah, I mean, depression runs pretty rampant in my family. But we got into a massive car accident that pretty much changed. It was one of those moments where it pretty much changed the trajectory of everybody's life. And my mom got the worst of it. I didn't know at the time, but at the time, as the accident was happening, she was convinced we were all going to die. Because she basically, I
cannot imagine that.
I could still see the truck coming, like we got hit into the other lane, and there's a Mack truck. My mom told the story so many times, but I remember being in the back seat, and she basically said, "Okay, we're coming to you," to God, and my brother jumped up and kind of turned the wheel just in time, basically. And so my brother and the three of us...
That to me amazes me that he did that. How old was he again?
He 11 maybe? It was really early when we got there. Johan's age? I
don't see myself ever grabbing the steering wheel of an adult.
Yeah, my big brother is he's just he's a 1%er, like he's just a. I was just like, I thought it was cool what was happening. We're getting hit by all these cars. Oh my
God, that would be Johan.
And you see all these movies, and,
yeah,
and so I had no concept of my mortality at all.
Yeah.
Somehow my older brother did. He probably saved all of us. Considering I've lost people in car accidents that were a lot less. Mm-hmm. But after that, my mother, she suffered a traumatic brain injury. And I was completely fine. We walked out literally without a scratch. I remember we were going to Blockbuster Video and went home, and I had Ninja Gaiden, and I just went home and played Ninja Gaiden. But my mom was in the hospital. We couldn't see her for a while, and went to see her and all that. And it's crazy because my stepfather was on the other side of the street, and he was convinced that he had lost all of us. And he kind of never got over that either, because he loved all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, he's our stepfather, but he was certain that he just saw all of us die. So he got to, So that was a hard time. But my mom, she was never the same again. And like she was a very, she's like me, and sharp-witted.
You're
and
like him. You're like her.
I'm like her, right? Sharp-witted and very powerful and kind of an alpha personality, and then, you know, she became very angry. You know, like she'd not be able to find her pills or whatever, and she would go after us. She was convinced that some of us were taking her pills and hiding it or whatever, and I just think it was her mind's way of trying to, you know, when you have a mind like that, and then for it to go and you not be able to control it, it's a very disempowering feeling, I could imagine. And I think the alternative of us hiding it versus her, she'd go into a room and forget why she was in the room. And she's like 30.
You said that.
She's like 35 at this
You
point.
wait to find you can't remember what you said.
Yeah.
Same idea.
Yeah, she's like 35, max 36.
Really?
Yeah.
I just pictured her in her 40s when that happened.
No. She was,
Oh, that's infuriating.
you know.
Yeah.
And it was hard because she had a very, you know, she's kind of built like me, and then she had a massive knee injury in that, you know, and then 10 years later she gets into this horrible accident, and, you know, it screws with her mind, and she was just very, very angry. I didn't really know what was happening. I didn't understand what was going on. My older brother, you know, I mean, I don't know if he understood or not, but, you know, and it was, you know, my family, we never talked about anything. We never talked about anything. I talked about the accident once with my mom. She got out of the hospital, and I was in my room, and, you know, and I wanted to make sure that I was right with God, you know, because basically, when I would sit and think about it, and I don't remember much about the accident. I just remember her putting her hands up and saying, basically, we're coming to you, and then my brother jumping over, and then I remember thinking, I was like 8 years old. I remember thinking to myself, well, if Junior didn't do that, we'd have been dead. And the guy said it. The paramedics, EMT, whatever, they're like, you know, good thing nobody was in that passenger seat, which is another interesting story, because that day, we used to take turns about who gets to sit in the passenger seat next to Mom, and it was my turn, but Junior was saying it was his turn, so we started fighting, and my mom said, both of you get in the back. Just get in the back. That's how she solved the problem. And then sure enough, we get in this horrible accident, and the EMT was, well, good thing nobody was in that seat. They'd have been dead for sure. So it was just, I was just left alone. And I'm sure my brother, my older brother, a younger brother, I'm not sure if he really ever, but I'm sure my older brother was, you know, but so I only had one conversation about it, and that was with my mom when she got out, because my mom was basically like my pastor. Like I would, you know, like I wouldn't really listen to anybody else about. So I said, you know, so she basically, you know, walked me through and you know, did a little sinner's prayer or whatever, and because she's like, oh, you would have been with God, and I'm like, well, how do you know? Because I'm like, I do a lot of bad stuff. You know, I was like 7, 8 years old. You know, I was like, you know, I do a lot of bad stuff, Ma. So she, oh, Jesus died. You know, blah, blah. But that was the only conversation I had about it. And you know, looking back now, I'm like, that's probably a pretty traumatic. It's a pretty traumatic event for somebody to go through. But the worst part about it was, she just wasn't the mom that I like. Mom was always kind of moody, like I am. You know, she was always kind of like you know, you could just tell some days she was just sad for no reason or whatever. But when that hit, she couldn't remember stuff, and she wasn't as sharp as she used to be, and that frustrated her. And then she would, you know, she was trying to adjust. She'd take it out on us, and you know, I didn't understand what was going on. Now I understand, you know, because that's the stuff that's supposed to happen when you're like 75, 80, and she was like in her prime, and she couldn't work. You know, that was the other thing. Like practically she couldn't work because she was in recovery, but then just her mind just wasn't the same after that, you know, so.
And she was a nurse, so.
She's a registered nurse, yeah.
You know, it's not like, there are some jobs where if you forget what you're doing, it's not a big deal, but you can't do that in healthcare.
Yeah, she used to run the shop. I mean, she eventually, intermittently was able to go back to work and stuff, but she was never able to like maintain it
Not full, yeah.
because
Capacity.
she would, whatever.
Too
So
bad.
it's a, it's a hard song to think about, and then these girls are watching it happen to their grandfather, and then you kind of feel, you start going, well, this is hereditary. This might happen to me, and it's just it's a crazy thing. Matt is a hatter. I think the hatters the chemicals that they used to use to make the hats would go, and then people would go insane. They'd go crazy.
Oh, is that why that happened?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I don't know if that's an urban legend or something, but I'm pretty sure,
I didn't know that was a thing that hatters would go mad. I just thought that it was in the
I think it was
Alice in Wonderland.
the chemicals that they were.
I thought he was already mad.
Yeah, the chemicals that they were using or whatever. Maybe it's an urban legend. I'm pretty sure the chemicals that they were using, whatever, was actually.
Well, it would make them high all the time, maybe, and then.
Yeah, and it would drive.
Can't do that all the time.
Drive them crazy.
Yeah.
There's a couple Alice in Wonderland references here. Like for example,
Of course there is.
the off with her head. That's what the Queen was saying. And
Paint the roses red.
yeah, what's that? Is that part of the song?
That's part of Alice in Wonderland. They had white roses and they were painting them red.
Okay, why?
And then-
What was the significance of that in the story?
I think that, I don't know if the Queen had asked for them to be white or if the Queen asked for them to be red, and then when they blossomed they were white and she would kill them, so then they were trying to paint them. I really don't remember. I just remember them painting white roses red. Also, time is a thief. Remember at the beginning the rabbit had the time? He was like always talking about time and being late.
Yeah. It'll steal into your bed and rob you while you sleep. You'll never feel it. And then the chorus is pretty ominous. Don't come for me. I promise I'll be great. Just let me keep what's mine. Yeah. I mean, it's it's a strange thing, but this song really made me appreciate God, and I don't know why. I don't know. It's kind of like as I'm listening to this song and all that, and it was just basically even if you're lost in your own mind, I would find you, type of thing. And so I was like, as I'm listening to the song, I'm like, okay, so I'm not even gonna worry about it, because the last couple of years of my mom's life, she was kind of. But her relationship with God was still very, very strong. And we've talked about this before, like the difference between the mind and the spirit. They're not the same thing. They're interconnected, but they're not the same thing. So your mind can be all over the place, but your spirit can still be connected to God. And so that's kind of my hope. I've never really feared that I'd be in the situation my mom was, because I don't think that that's hereditary. The depression is obviously hereditary. My grandmother had bipolar or whatever. I didn't find that out till much later, but my grandmother had bipolar. I'm sure her mother did, and then my mom did, obviously. And so I've already went through the slings and arrows of that. So but what happened to my mom was environmental. I mean, she had a car accident, and it screwed with her, But I've had family members, close family members to me, that have dealt with schizophrenia and things of that nature, and but
It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough, but he was one of the strongest people I've known, period, in life, and he was able to, get through it and get past it and.
Really? I didn't know that was possible.
Manage. Yeah. I mean, he still goes through, seasons and stuff where he knows it's his mental illness. He's kind of outside of it, looking and knowing the signs. And he's able to, yeah, my family is, we're full of we're one in a million. Shout out to the big homie. But when he was in the initial phases of it or whatever, and he didn't know what was going on, it was a scary time, for all of us.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty bad summer.
Yeah.
That summer. So, yeah. So This is a really, really good song. Really, really hit home. Those two girls could make some decent noise. It's just the two of them. And there's nothing really like sisters that can sing. Like, there's this local...
I was like, how come none of our kids are musically inclined?
This local... they're this local group of sisters here that were just unbelievable as far as their vocal talent. But yeah, really, really, really good song. I'm gonna find these guys again. I don't know if I'll ever listen to this song again. My lord. But these two are eminently talented, and that is why you homeschool, ladies and gents. Because instead of spending 6-7 hours in school, they probably did 2 hours in school and then went to just played guitar the whole time. Which is what you can do when you homeschool. Which all the people that were saying, you're psychotic. What about now? Yeah. All of you have to homeschool now because of COVID. I guess all your kids are just maladjusted now because they're homeschooling. What do you give the song?
I'll tell you who's maladjusted. You, because you weren't prepared for it. It's a 10 for me.
We saw that girl do that post on Facebook, and you were like, what are these public schools doing to these kids?
She's
Zoe's age.
I think she's a little bit older than Zoe.
Yeah.
But her writing is worse than Selah's the youngest one in school. Her writing is far worse. Her grammar. Yeah.
Because she posted on Facebook, God forbid we see what she actually wrote down. And
if she hadn't have written such a horrific thing, I actually would have screenshot it and had the kids correct it.
Right.
But without showing her name. Yeah. But it was just... Okay, anyway.
I really appreciate Homeboy bringing up this song. It's a good song.
This is a really good one.
And
it's full of goosebumps. And I loved when they got face to face, the sisters like that.
Yeah.
Oh.
You didn't get to say goodbye or whatnot, my man. But God squared it. God's got a way of squaring this stuff. Don't stress it. Don't stress it. Shout out to the big homie. What'd you give it?
I gave it a 10.
This is an 11 for me.
I could go to an 11.
I think it's 11. One of those. It's a necessary song.
Yep, 11.
It's a necessary song that is required listening. Mm-hmm. It's good stuff. Vin out.
Sori out.
Gone.
You are so quiet. So are we. Sometimes.